Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. It is Monday and it is rally week. So I'm going to do some housekeeping first. If you haven't watched the mountain of content from Rally Vosges Grand Est, go and do so. There are vlogs and action videos and lots of things. I will put a link to the playlist in the description. Go and watch that because I want you to watch it, and there's some good content in there. Some of the videos are very long, so I appreciate that it might take some patience, but there is some good stuff in there, I promise you. Anyway, it's rally week. Acropolis Rally is this weekend. 346 just under kilometers of rough gravel action on one of the toughest events of the year. So the event kicks off on Thursday with a super special in Athens in the stadium, I believe, isn't it? So that is nice to see. I know not everyone is a fan of these Mickey Mouse stages, as they often get called, but they are a nice way for rallying to connect with a new audience, so that's very good. Then across the weekend we have many more kilometers to go. The mileage split across Friday and Saturday is about the same at 123-ish kilometers, with the rest on that short Sunday as always. So there's lots to look forward to, isn't there? I was just looking back at the results of last year, and for Toyota it was something of a disaster. Takamoto, Katsuta and Elfyn Evans both super rallied. So they will be hoping for better, won't they, this year? Let's start though with the man leading the championship, Elfyn Evans. There's been quite a lot of pressure on Elfyn, hasn't there, over the last two rallies. His lead has dropped significantly. He is 20 points ahead of Kalle Rovanpera. Is 18 points ahead of Sebastian Ogier. We will get onto those two, but I want to stick to Elfyn Evans. Difficult, isn't it? You know, he said in an article I saw on Dirtfish earlier this week, or end of last week, that he is comfortable with the situation and expected to lose some of that advantage, which is true, isn't it? You know, that I think that was always a risk. That said, for me, I think there needs to be a little bit of an uptick. He was okay last time out, wasn't he? Finished fourth, didn't he, in the last one? And that was okay, Sardinia. It wasn't too bad. Better than Portugal. He had a good result. Obviously, some people fell away, which helped him. And that is where he needs to be in terms of his approach in some respects. But personally, I would like to see a little bit more speed. Very difficult at Acropolis. Obviously, a big rally of attrition, as we saw from last year. So he has to carefully balance that risk, doesn't he? And hopefully, again, he will get a decent points haul after he gets through this one. Hopefully things will be a little bit better as we get into those faster events. The road cleaning will be less pronounced. But, you know, you could say that Acropolis is one where anything can happen. If he is steady but shows reasonable speed, then he could actually come away with a really good result. So he has to be careful to not go too slowly, but also be mindful that he can let people fall off the road a little bit. Obviously, there are two men behind him that are very good at that, in particular Sebastian Ogier, who is back again. As I said, second in the championship. There's been a lot of talk about him and whether he will do the full season or the remainder of the season and go for his 9th title. I don't actually think he will. I don't think that will happen. I know a lot of people are talking it up, but for me, I don't think it's going to happen. So it's a bit weird, isn't it? He's second in the championship. He's actually helping Rovanpera in a way because he's pushing him further down the road order and letting him deal with less road sweeping. But you know, I don't think that matters too much. He's only one position, isn't it? So is he a threat for the win? Of course, Ogier is always a threat for the win, especially on these more tactical events. You know, he has admitted himself that speed is not always on his side these days, but he's there, isn't he? He's a threat. And I think the interesting thing is probably the fact that he potentially takes points away from other people. So when he shows up and wins a rally, for example, that in a way you could argue it helps Elfyn, doesn't it? Because, you know, Ogier is taking points away from someone else that could potentially have won if Elfyn isn't having such a good rally. So he's a bit of a wild card thing in there. Let's talk about Kalle Rovanpera though, shall we? It's been a slightly weird season for Rovanpera, hasn't it? A bit up and down, obviously blistering on the Canary Islands, but a bit tricky on some other rallies. So it's hard to know. He's still adjusting, I think, isn't he, to these tyres. Will he be a threat this weekend? Yes, I think he will. He's got that little bit of an edge in terms of running order. So will he win the rally? I don't know. I think that might be a bit of a push, but I think he's just going to keep chipping away in terms of points. I think Elfyn will probably lose a few more points here potentially. So I think that is his approach at the moment, just keep chipping away, particularly as once we get into the fast gravel, Finland, Estonia, places like that, I think he's going to really put the hammer down and start putting some pressure on Elfyn. And I think, you know, if we look back to last year, perhaps Elfyn had an advantage on tarmac, but what we see, obviously, Canary Islands, Rovanpera was blistering, he blew everyone away, and he's now got that in his back pockets. And so Elfyn might have been looking forward to Central Europe later in the year if he could have preserved his lead, get back on tarmac, do that event, do Japan, and he would then have been fairly comfortable, he would have hoped, ready for the end of the season for Saudi Arabia. Now what we're seeing is that, you know, we could find ourselves in a position where Rovanpera is in a good position as we get onto the fast gravel and can start to really, you know, eat that lead or even take the lead of the championship. We go to Central Europe on tarmac and he blows everyone away again, and then the championship is effectively his, isn't it, before we get to Saudi Arabia. So really interesting dynamic in that respect. So very interesting to see what happens there. Of course, we have Hyundai to throw into the mix as well, don't we? And they won the rally. Thierry Neuville won the rally last year. I think they got a podium lockout, didn't they? So Toyota fell apart a bit last year, didn't they? They had some problems. So are Hyundai going to do the same again? Again, they've had a weird season, haven't they, with this new car and the uncertainty about their future and all this stuff. But this is clearly a rally that suited them last year, and there's no reason to suggest it won't suit them again. Thierry Neuville, for me, is out of the title fight now. I think, you know, he's a long way behind. And yes, things can change, but for me, it's a bit of a distant thing. So I don't see him being in the championship fight. But I think he's very, very capable of winning this rally, obviously being a bit further down the order. He's got running order on his side, provided no one pulls any big rocks out into his path, of course. So I think he's a definite threat. Tanak, again, also a threat this weekend. I think he's a bit of a long shot of the championship. Obviously not as much as Neuville for me, but again, I think he's a threat for victory. Good in Sardinia, and I think, I said this in another video, didn't I? I think it was after Sardinia. You know, it's not a case of him being back, but I think we're seeing a better Tanak, a more resolved Tanak than we have perhaps seen over the last few seasons. So I think he's definitely a threat for this weekend. I haven't talked about M Sport yet, have I? Let's talk about M Sport. A big roster at M Sport, but I'm going to talk about Hyundai again quickly because I forgot Adrian Former, who's had a difficult season, lots and lots of flashes of speed, but also some incidents. Is he going to fix that this weekend? I'm going to say that I think he kind of needs to. I think he needs to get a result on the board. For me, if I was him, I would perhaps just drop the pace just a tiny little bit and just try and finish this rally, get a good result. If he can finish in the top 4, that would be, you know, solid. And I don't think he needs to be blisteringly quick. He's shown that he can be really fast. So for me, just get a result on the board as we start to go into those quicker rallies in the summer. Yeah, I think for me, he just needs a result. Anyway, M Sport, let's talk about M Sport. 4 cars for M Sport. So we have the usual suspects in Josh McAleen and Gregoire Munster. That dynamic is getting interesting for me because McAleen is showing very quickly that that he has speed. Yes, he's not fighting at the front, but I think he is, crucially, as it is in all motorsport, he is showing that he has what it takes to beat his teammate. And the first person that you have to beat is your teammate. You know, we know that the Puma isn't quite on the same level as the other 2 cars, and you know, these drivers, Munster and McAleen, are not quite at that level yet. So I think for him to be matching Munster is impressive. You know, this is his first season. Yes, he's got experience on quite a few of the rallies, but in terms of the car, not so much. So I think we are seeing good steps from McAleen, and he just, for me, didn't have a great Sardinia, obviously, because M Sport had a terrible Sardinia, but he just needs to keep building. And I think if he keeps on building, things will improve. For Munster, I think it's more difficult, isn't it? You know, last season was a building season for him, and you could argue that this one is as well, but I think, I don't know, for me the pressure is starting to build. Yes, we had a stage win in Monte Carlo, so there has been some progress, but I think the fact that McAleen is kind of catching him in terms of level should be a bit of a concern. So I think there is something for him to prove. In the other Pumas, we have Jordan Serdaridis. He's obviously doing his home event, or semi-home event, because he's obviously Greek-Belgian. And we have Martin Sesks. Again, he had a bad Sardinia rolling out of that rally, so not so good, and I think he needs to prove some consistency, because after his sort of hot shot start last year, he's perhaps not been so consistent and not quite so fast. So I think there's some work to do for him, but I think it's such early days. I'm not concerned. He obviously won his ERC outing recently, so no cause for concern there for Sex. For me, it's just a case of building and showing what he can do. So that is WRC Rally 1. Let me just talk quickly about WRC 2. So we have Johan Rossell leading the WRC 2 field, followed by Oliver Solberg, and I'm going to focus on those two because I don't want this video to be too long. Who's going to win? Oh, who's going to win there? On pace for me, Solberg, but Rossell, he's a canny character. I saw him say in the media that he deserves a Rally 1 drive, and I want to talk about that quickly. Solberg is at the point where he deserves a Rally 1 drive. I think he has proven it. I think he was promoted to Hyundai too soon in the past, but I think he is now ready. Whatever happens this year, there is rumour, I know, of him getting the odd drive in a Rally 1 car this year, and I think he's ready. So I think he's ready to move up. Should Rossell get a chance? That is a good question, isn't it? I think he deserves it. The problem is, where does he go? You know, Toyota have a full roster, don't they, with their part-time, with their full-time drivers, and with Pajari obviously in the junior kind of setup, and Solberg in the wing. So I think there's nowhere to kind of go there, is there? Hyundai as well. You know, again, they've got a full lineup. They've got 3 full-time drivers, and they have said that they would potentially run a 4th car. Maybe he could put something together for a one-off outing, but is that, how much value is there in that? I don't know. And then you've got M Sport, and the problem, as always with M Sport, is if he wants to drive that car, he's going to have to take money, and I don't know if he has the budget. So very difficult position for Rossell. I haven't said if he's ready. I think he deserves a shot. You know, I think you could argue that the Citroen isn't the best car, particularly on gravel. It's a very good tarmac car. But he keeps putting himself in the fight, doesn't he? He's consistently in the WRC2 fight, consistently running at the front. So for me, you know, if you're one of the fastest and most consistent drivers in WRC2, surely the whole point is that you deserve a shot in a Rally 1 car. So you have to feel for Rossell a bit, don't you? He seems to get a bit overlooked given his abilities. So that is that. I should do an overall rally prediction though, shouldn't I? Who is going to win this rally? I'm going to say that Oyt Tanak is going to win Acropolis Rally, Sebastian Ogier is going to finish 2nd, and Kalle Rovanpera is going to finish 3rd. That is my prediction. I think that sounds very similar to my Sardinia prediction that I got wrong. So that is my prediction. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to win in WRC1 and in WRC2. As always, make sure you follow me on socials. And as I said, go and watch that Rally Vosges content because it's good and I want views to validate myself. Otherwise, let's leave it there and I will see you again in the next one.